In this very lesson, we want to look at another approach that can be used to find the inverse of a matrix, and this method is the rule operation. The rule operation is based on the property of determinant of matrix. To use this method, what we'll be doing is to first, I'm going to augment the matrix by a unit word matrix. And this unit matrix might be of the same dimension as the matrix. Now, of the same dimension means that when you have, let's say, a 2 by 2 matrix, and then we have to augment it, then we are going to augment this 2 by 2 matrix with a 2 by 2 unit matrix. So we are going to have, if you have a 3 by 3 matrix, then we have to augment this 3 by 3 matrix with a 3 by 3 unit matrix. So we are going to augment it with a 3 by 3 unit matrix. So after our augmenting, the next thing that we are going to do is to perform operations on the rule until what is on the left hand side becomes a unit matrix. Now whatever remains on the right hand side becomes what? The inverse of the matrix that we are looking for. So this is what the rule operation is all about. Let's look at our first example. So we want to find the inverse of A and realize that matrix A is what? A 2 by 2 matrix, and therefore we have to augment it with a 2 by 2 unit matrix. So let's call the first rule 1 and then the second rule 2. Now what we'll be doing next is to perform operations on these rules until this part of the augmented matrix becomes a unit matrix. So we want this entry to be 0, this entry to be 0, this entry to be 1, and then this entry to be 1 as well. What is left on the right hand side of the augmented matrix becomes the inverse of matrix A. So let's start with this entry. We want this entry to be what? 0. So we have to perform operations on it. So you realize that when you multiply row 2, which is this, by 3, and then we have, when you multiply row 1 by 2, this entry will become 0. Let's try it and see. So we have 3 row 2 is what? 2 minus 2, row 1 is what? 3. This will give us 6 minus 6, and that gives us 0. So we have achieved our first aim. Now we are going to apply this operation for all the entries on row 2. Remember, row 1 is untouched. We are going to repeat it. So after performing the operation, we know that this will give us 0. Now let's move on to this entry. So we have 3 and then 2 minus 2. Row 1 is what? 1. So we have 6 minus 2. That gives us what? 4. So this entry will be 4. Let's move on to this entry. So we have 3 and then we have 0 minus 2. R1 is what? 1. So we have 0 minus 2, and that gives us what? Minus 2. So we have minus 2. Let's look at this entry. So we have 3. Row 2 is what? 1 minus 2. Row 1 is what? 0. This will give us 3 minus 0, and we have what? 3. So we have this entry to be 3 as well. Now once we have done with this, then we are going to look at this entry. We want this entry to be 0. We want this entry to be what? 0. So we have to perform operation on the first row so that we can get this entry to be 0. And realize that when you multiply row 1 by 4, so when you multiply row 1 by 4, and then we have minus row 2, this entry is going to be 0. Let's try it and see. We have 4, row 1 is what? 1, minus row 2 is what? 4. So we have 4 minus 4, we have 0. We have achieved our A. So we are going to use this operation on the first row. So we have, remember the second row is untouched, so let's repeat the entries. So we have 4, row 1 is 3, minus what? R2 is 0, and this is going to give us what? 12. So we have 12. Then move on to this side. This side will surely give us what? 0, because it was the one that gave us what? The row. Then we look at this part. So we have 4, row 1 is 1, minus row 2 is what? Minus 2. So we have 4 plus 2, that gives us what? 6. So we have 6. Then we are looking at this entry as well. So we have 4, row 1 is 0, minus row 2 is what? 3. So we have minus what? 3. So we are done with the zeros. Let's look at the leading diagonal. We want this entry to be 1. We want this entry to be 1. So realize that when we divide row 1 by what? 12, this entry is going to be 1. When we divide row 2 by 4, we are getting this entry to be 1. Do you agree with me? Good. So at the end, we are going to have row 1 divided by 12. That is 12 divided by 12 will give us 1. We have 0 divided by 12 will give us what? 0. We have 6 divided by 12 will give us what? 1 over 2. 3 divided by 12 will give us neg 1 over 4. So we have neg 1 over 4. Then we look at what? Row 2. So 0 divided by 4 will give us 0. 4 divided by 4 will give us 1. Neg 2 divided by 4 will give us minus 1 over 2. And then move on to 3 divided by 4 will give us 3 over 4. From here, we can observe that the left-hand side of the augmented matrix has become what? A unit matrix. If that happens, what is left on the right-hand side becomes the inverse of the matrix we are looking for. So the inverse of matrix A, we have 1 over 2. So this is how we use the row operation to find the inverse of a matrix. So we want to find the inverse of this matrix using what? The row operation. So first of all, we realize that this is what? A 2 by 2 matrix. So we have to augment it with 2 by 2 unit matrix. So we are going to have, so let's call the first row row 1, the second row row 2. Now once we have this, we are going to make sure that this entry is 0, this entry is 0, this entry is 1, and then this entry is 1. So let's start with this entry. We want this entry to be 0. So you realize that when we multiply row 2 by 2, so we have 2 row 2 and then minus 9 row 1, we are going to get this entry to be 0. So we have 2, 9 minus 9, and then 2. We have 18 minus what? 18, and that gives us 0. So we have achieved our first rule. Now remember, the first rule is untouched. We are going to repeat it. And then this is certainly going to give us 0. Now let's look at this entry. So we have 2, 18 minus 9, row 1 is what? 1. So we have 36 minus 9, that gives us what? 27. So we have 27. Let's look at this entry. So we have 2 minus 9, 1. We have what? Minus 9. And then let's look at this entry as well. So we have 2 R2 is 1 minus 9. R1 is what? 0. This is going to give us what? 2 minus what? 0. And we have what? 2. So we have this entry to be 2 as well. Now let's look at this. We are saying that this is row 1 and this what? Row 2. So we want this entry to be what? 0. So we are going to multiply row 1 by what? 27. And then we have minus what? Row 2. So let's do the operation. We have 27. Row 1 is what? 2. Minus what? Row 2 is 0. So we have what? 54 minus 0. And that gives us what? 54. And this is going to give us 27. Row 1 is 1 minus 27. That is going to give us what? 0. So remember that row 2 is untouched, so we can repeat it. So this gives us 54. This gives us what? 0. Let's look at this entry. So we have 27. Row 1 is what? 1 minus what? Minus 9. So we have 27 plus 9. That will give us what? 36. So we have this entry to be 36. We are looking for this entry. So we have 27. Row 1 is what? 0 minus what? 2. So we have what? Minus 2. So we have minus 2. Now we want this entry to be 1 and then this entry to be 1. So we can divide row 1 by what? 54. And we are going to get this entry to be 1. And then when we divide row 2 by what? 27, we are going to get this entry to be 1. So we have 54 divided by 54 give us what? 1. This will give us 0. This will give us 2 over 3. And then minus 2 divided by 54 give us minus 1 over what? 27. Then we have R2 divided by 27. This will give us 0. This will give us 1. This will give us minus 1 over 3. This will give us what? 2 over what? 27. Therefore, the inverse of matrix X is going to be what? 2 over 3 minus 1 over 27 minus 1 over 3 and then 2 over 27. As easy as that. So this is how we use the row operation to find the inverse of a matrix. This brings us to the end of today's lesson. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.